We're not there. We haven't cracked the nut. We're not yet using the thinking tools and knowledge of evaluation to best inform our decisions, make adjustments, engage residents, understand implications of our work. We're just not there yet.
What we're chasing is a moving target that it is complex, and we have to, as Lee Shore talks about, embrace that complexity. And that's the first thing, and I think that's the hardest thing for funders to accept.
It is imperative upon us, as evaluators, to make sure that the data we collect allows us to disaggregate that story so we can understand for whom and under what conditions. And until we do that, we will, I think, disserve the communities that we work with specifically.
As we go further into the conversation, I would like us to sort of, bravely look at not only what we need to shed in the way of the frames that I think are contributing to the faulty theory, but what we've got to replace it with.
The thing about place-based initiatives that's so interesting is that not only are we affected by context, but we change context in play too. So we have to look at those mechanisms, those that we move and those that we don't move, and how they affect the outcome.
So what do we know about complexity, and what does it mean to be evaluating it, right? What we know is that we have to be adaptive, we have to be flexible, and we have to be creating learning systems. That's what we know. And those are all things that evaluators do. I think what has unfortunately happened is because of the press for accountability and the movement of evidence-based practices, what has happened to evaluation practice in a lot of place-based work that I've seen around the country is it has de-emphasized flexibility in learning and overemphasized accountability. And I think there's a risk at that because there's now become such a focus on discrete, observable outcomes that we forget how we misrepresent the work when we do that, and how a sole focus on accountability actually misses the value and the contribution that evaluation can bring to the table. What you're trying to identify when you go out into the community is not just what the current conditions are, but what are the underlying root causes of the problems that exist. There is significantly often a misalignment between the strategies that are rolled out and the actual underlying causes of the problems in the community.
The science tells us that certain capacities and certain policy changes have been proven to make a difference. So if you can get to that point, you know you're going to have the results. You should be working towards those critical points, those levers of change, those critical points in there.
The challenge with evaluation is we have taught local communities that we are the purveyors and the creators of knowledge. In order to transform space and place, we actually have to help them see that they are actually the creators of local knowledge, and that it is our job to facilitate their use of that knowledge in good ways. One of the great myths about place-based work is that systems take a long time to change. Actually, people take longer. Systems are really pretty simple, okay, to shift. And so it's helping people see that you can really simply shift practices and policies inside local community systems. And that's the kinds of long-term sustainable conditions that if you get into place, you actually lead to the longer-term outcomes that you want.
The thing we often don't talk about in large, well-funded, place-based initiatives is the power imbalance between the funder who's got a really clear idea about what the strategy is and ought to be, and a community who quietly says, no, probably that's not quite right for any number of reasons. I think evaluators can use that neutrality and that distance to be more effective mediators in a variety of real-time situations and create pathways for gathering and conveying information, not data in the formal sense, but information that is highly usable for course correcting. And I think finding the ways to sort of put that up front on the table is a really important part of this next wave of evaluation thinking.
But I think we really have not embraced the rest of the world on this. And I started with that, and I just want to make that point, is that right now, again, on this issue of justice, we have to bring this data to the public. It is still a matter of us talking to each other, funders, government people, evaluators, and TA providers, and the poor and disenfranchised are the audience for this. They're the only one in our system right now. And that's why it's such an uphill battle. And until we begin to expand out and begin to think about how to embrace these other communities and everybody else, as Peter Dry said so clearly, we are segregated. We have to bring those super rich people into it. There is sentiment out there, but they don't get this data. So it's not only a matter of, in addition to all the learning that Penny was talking about and Tom, it's that the public has to learn with us too.
I actually think evaluators need to be incredibly familiar with how change happens. I think you can be an excellent evaluator and trained in an evaluation and even have your degree in evaluation and never have taken a class on change. But we are evaluating change. That's what we do.